With the 59th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Terrace Marshall Jr.
So yeah, the Panthers' previous GM was really freaking bad at his job, wasn't he? Welcome everybody to GG9 News. We talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared here and I representing the 904 from the 602. And today we are talking about the roster cuts that took place yesterday if you're watching as of this video getting released, and what it could mean for this team behind me right here, the defending champions in the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills. Because yesterday, the Carolina Panthers released wide receiver Terrace Marshall, meaning that Terrace Marshall is going to go on waivers and he can be claimed by any team. The second-round pick out of LSU in the 2021 NFL Draft, one of Fitterer's worst draft picks, and that's saying a lot because he made a lot of crappy draft picks as the previous GM of the Panthers, is one of the worst GMs of all time. He was very underwhelming to say the least, and that's putting it lightly. 64 catches, 767 yards, and 1 touchdown. That wasn't a stat line last year. That was a stat line over his first 3 seasons in Carolina. That was it. Second-round pick, and that was all he was able to accomplish. Last year, he was abysmal. 19 catches, 139 yards, no touchdowns. He was not good in Carolina. Hands were inconsistent. Couldn't create a whole lot of separation at times. It was just not a good fit whatsoever. And Terrace Marshall is now a free agent. He's going to be on the waiver wire, and you'll see what team picks him up and where he will land afterwards because his time in Carolina is done. Having said that, though, the Buffalo Bills seem like a very obvious fit for Terrace Marshall, to the point where I would be very, very shocked if he is not on the Buffalo Bills by the end of this week and is not playing in upstate New York. If you look at the Bills roster right now, they only have 5 receivers on the 53. That's it. They've got Keon Coleman. They got Matt Collins. They got Carter Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and Marcus Valdes-Scantling. They've got 5 receivers on the 53. And that's bizarre for Buffalo. Some teams carry 5. There's no issue carrying 5. But the Bills usually carry 6. Sean McDermott has been the head coach of the Bills since the start of the 2017 season. And every single season, from 2017 to 2023, the initial 53-man roster for the Buffalo Bills featured at least 6 receivers on it. Last year, they kept 6 on the initial 53. You had Stephon Diggs, you had Gabe Davis, you had Hardy, Shakir, Trent Sherfield, and Shorter. 2022, they kept 7 receivers on the 53. Diggs, Davis, McKenzie, Crowder, Kumaro, Shakir, and Stevenson. 2021, once again, they kept 7. Diggs, Sanders, McKenzie, Stevenson, Kumaro, Davis, and Beasley. 2020, they kept 6. Diggs, Brown, Beasley, Davis, McKenzie, and Hodgins. 2019, they also kept 6 receivers on the 53 to start off. Brown, Beasley, Jones, Roberts, Foster, and McKenzie. 2018, they kept 6 receivers on the 53. Benjamin, Jones, Curley, Holmes, McLeod, and Foster. And in 2017, they kept 6 receivers on the 53-man roster to start off. Brown, Clay, Holmes, Jones, Matthews, and Tate. Hard to imagine that 2017 receiving core was good enough to make the playoffs that year for Buffalo. But that's what we're dealing with here in Buffalo. Sean Taylor's been there for nearly a decade, and Brandon Beane, the GM there, has been there for nearly a decade. And every single year that they've been there, the Bills have gone into a season with 6 receivers or more on the 53. The fact that they only have 5 this year on the 53, that's 1 under what they usually have, and it means that there should be a spot available for that 6th receiver, and that's where Terrace Marshall comes into play, entering his 4th year in the NFL, because the dots fit tremendously. If you look at the Buffalo Bills, who's the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills? Well, it's Joe Brady. And if you know the name Joe Brady, he was the Panthers offensive coordinator in 2021 when Terrace Marshall got drafted by the team. He was pounding the table hard for Terrace Marshall to come to Carolina, and there's a reason why. And that's because Terrace Marshall played his college football at LSU, and who was the passing game coordinator and the wide receivers coach in 2019 with LSU when Terrace Marshall was there? You guessed it, Joe Brady. Marshall was very good at LSU, obviously. 2019, when Brady was there, it was his most productive season ever. He won a natty, he had 46 catches for 671 yards, and a career-high 13 touchdowns, which was 7th in the entire NCAA. Joe Brady knows Terrace Marshall incredibly well. He loves the guy. He has raved about the guy over and over again. Here's what Joe Brady had to say about Terrace Marshall the moment that the Panthers drafted him in 2021. As he said, he's a good fit, which is obvious because he knows the system because Joe Brady was there in college with Terrace Marshall. All I can say is we have a great vision for him as a Carolina Panther. The skill set he has is going to be a great asset to our offense. The more weapons you have is always better. It's our job to find out what he does well and put him in positions to have success. Excited to get that to work with him and see him earn it all over again. Not too many people are 6'2", 200 plus, and run a 4.3 and are able to make plays on the ball like Terrace does. When the ball's in the air, Terrace always finds a way to come down with it. And I think he showcased that every time he was on the football field. Not a lot of games, but a lot of production. There's not a player that works harder and is more dedicated to his craft than Terrace Marshall. So let's think about this for a second. The Bills need a 6th wide receiver going off of history because they don't carry fewer than 6 going into the week 1. They don't carry fewer than 6 going into the first week of the regular season. The Bills' offensive coordinator was at LSU. He was at Carolina. He loved Marshall. He probably loves Marshall more than any other coach in the NFL right now or any other coach in football. And Marshall is available. Gee, that seems like a pretty obvious fit, doesn't it? And if that's not enough, the Bills beat writer for Sports Illustrated echoed the same thoughts. When someone asked him, who are your most likely playing targets for the Bills? He said, Terrace Marshall is the one player that seems like an obvious choice for the Bills. I wouldn't love it, but it would make sense. Again, if you connect all the dots, it seems very, very likely that unless someone claims Terrace Marshall before he gets a chance to go to Buffalo, that he will be playing in Buffalo and will be making the team as wide receiver 6 or maybe even wide receiver 5 over a guy like Matt Collins. The connections are all there. Joe Brady, Terrace Marshall, wherever Brady goes, it seems like Marshall goes. I could definitely see a scenario, especially considering how the 53-man roster shaped up initially with only 5 receivers on the 53. I could definitely see a scenario where the Bills get that 6th receiver that they always seem to carry, and that player turns out to be the man out of LSU that Joe Brady raved about over and over again, none other than Terrace Marshall. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think the Buffalo Bills will acquire Terrace Marshall? Do you think that he will be a good player in Buffalo if he does go to Buffalo? What team do you think picks him up? How would you rate his stint in Carolina, aside from being obviously atrocious? Any memories of him in Carolina besides him not being that good? Again, Fitterer was one of the worst GMs of all time, and that pick did not help his cause. But what are your thoughts on all this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And that is going to do it for this episode of JJ9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, Jared Garrett 9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is Jared Garrett 9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.